welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Maia, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. I've known you've been in my sphere for a while, but it wasn't until I did creative living where I really got to experience your energy and genius in more of a intimate container, and it truly changed my life. I mean, for those who don't know, I always said that creative living is a writing program of sorts, but it's so much more than that, and your part in it especially is so much more than that, and so all encompassing. And yeah, when I say it changed my life, I don't just mean it changed how I write and speak in the world. It really changed how I show up in my body, how I structure my life, how I think about creativity in general. So much to thank you for, and just so happy that you're here.
Wow, I'm already about to cry. So excited to be here. So excited to be here with you. I'm such a big fan of your work. And honestly, creative living shaped my life as well. It's like the thing that I needed all my life, and creating it and seeing so many people go through it. So many rebirths from creative living. Like I get messages all the time that it's like, I'm a different person. And I'm like, of course, because like when you get connected to your creativity, that's what happens. So happy to hear that. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here, honestly.
Okay, before we get into all of that, the first question that I ask every guest is, what is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
Wow, this is fun. I feel like no one knows where I'm from, or everyone. Like I can tell that people know that I'm Latina, as far as that I give Latina vibes for sure.
Mm.
But I am actually Moroccan. Like most of my blood is Moroccan. My dad is fully Moroccan. My grandparents were fully Moroccan. And then I grew up in Venezuela, which is what a lot of people know about me. But my mom is Colombian. My dad is Moroccan. So that makes me actually 50% Colombian, 50% Moroccan, 0% Venezuelan.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's so interesting. And
Yeah.
do you feel that that cultural mix really impacts your life or has shaped who you are?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how Moroccan and how Arab I was until I lived in Morocco. And it was so incredible how my whole body shape, like my hair, my skin, my French accent, because I lived in France for 2 years, everything changed when I was living in Morocco. And I felt one of the biggest skin shedding moments of my life. And I feel like I understood that that's home. So I feel like all my life, I didn't feel identified with Venezuela, but when I lived in Morocco, I understood that I am Arab. I really feel it in my blood, and it's such a beautiful culture.
Wow. Well, speaking of shedding and shifting identities, that is a spiral process that I'm very familiar with and feels like a big theme in my life. And I feel like it is for you as well. I'm curious how you view your identity. Like, who would you say you are now if someone were to
Wow.
ask you? Which
Wow.
I know that that is a very hard question, and so I'm really curious how you answer that.
Yeah, what comes to mind is, and I'm so jealous because I wish I could interview you on the same thing, but you have to come to a podcast. Like we have to do this again. I feel like for me, the second that I stopped being so interested in like who am I, like who am actually I, and I started just really letting whoever wanted to come embody, the moment is when I started experiencing shape shifting to the max, and I started getting really comfortable with whoever character wanted to come play. And that's why I think I travel so much, because it has been such an exercise for me to like role play identities and understand like, wow, I feel closer to the core here. Oh, okay, this type of environment takes me away from the core.
Mm.
So if you ask me who I am right now, It really depends, on the environment and on who knows, maybe the planets or whatever wants to manifest. So that's the answer. It really depends. It's very fluid.
I love that because I resonate with that so much. And I think that that is one reason I felt so drawn to how you approach creativity because it allows for that shift in identity, it allows for that fluidity, and it allows us to show up as whoever we are in that moment and for it to be completely different than who it was yesterday. And I think that I used to feel shame around that part of myself, around the fact that I was constantly evolving or how impactful my environment and my emotions were on how I was showing up in the world. And so having that permission slip to just like be that way has been so helpful. And it's definitely been a huge practice for me and something that you talk about in so much of your work and that we definitely delved into in creative living is how in order to show up differently or have a different to live differently in your life, you have to create that safety in your body to do so.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so I would really love to hear about that process for you. Like, when did you realize that important piece in the process for yourself?
Yeah, wow. I mean, very late. But I love that you're bringing in creativity and shapeshifting because that is exactly the process is becoming a container. So shapeshifting is not just like changing all the time, right? Because for me, the most shapeshifting humans are actually the most creative humans because creativity has nothing to do with skills, right? And when you allow yourself to be that container, which is kind of what I was saying before, it's not so much of like what the container is going to look like, but just becoming the container, then the creative force of the universe or creativity, Shakti, Kundalini, however you want to call it, then it can come and dance in you. So shapeshifting is a lot of a dance of, yeah, becoming the container. And in terms of safety, I mean, if you think about, a container, if you wanna become an invitation for an energy, it really has to be safe. It really has to feel safe. And somatically, your body will not change until it feels safety. And when it comes to creativity, this is very, very, very often the case that someone doesn't feel like they can explore different facets of themselves because they have so much resistance in the body. And the body's like, no, this feels so unfamiliar. We can't change. We can't delve. We can't step into this arena until we find self safety in the body.
Yeah, it's we are taught from such a young age that change is scary, that it's unsafe, that we need to know the next step and like have that clarity and certainty. And so for me, in order to like con it, have control, I feared change, specifically like in my body, like wanting to control the body. And we're taught not to feel safe in our bodies. We're taught our bodies are something to try to control and try to contain. And really, they're just like, they are a container, but it's like this fluid container, not one that we have to like constrict. And so it's so interesting how I think that once we are able to release that need for control and find safety within our bodies, we can open our eyes to a whole, like, that's when we can bring in what we really want into our lives.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing in the word control because it does feel a little bit like shape-shifting creativity. It does feel a little bit between like a dance between safety and control, you know? It really does feel like a sustained release energy because you do want to invite the chaos, but you want to give that chaos a job. You don't want chaos to just possess you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, when you have this balance of when you have the safety periods, then you can really kind of like have a valve on how much control you can have on these things.
Yeah, exactly. And so much of life is about finding, I hate the word balance, but like finding that fluidity and finding that like ebb and flow between whether it's masculine and feminine energy or chaos and control, whatever it is, it's like really allowing ourselves to to be safe in that dance, like you were saying, and not feeling like we have to be all black and white, all one way or the other. And again, it's just letting our bodies lead us through our lives more than our minds.
I love that, and I think your work is so beautiful at that, and you're like in so many domains of your life. You literally teach how to like come out of the mind and into the body, and this is exactly what somatics is, and that's why it's so difficult to quote unquote teach because it can't really be taught or intellectualized. It can only be felt. All these energies, right? The shape shifting energy, creativity, sensuality, spirituality. It's only things that can be felt. So since you brought up like yeah, pretty much polarity, masculine, feminine, and having that fluidity. I love the word fluidity versus control versus balance. That balance between like both forces, the body, when it becomes a container and you can contain those two forces, that's when you can really channel it. The example that I really like to give when we talk about those polarities is thinking that, especially, I think the feminine energy is just such an ocean normally. And when you come in and create that safety is or that masculine energy, because for me safety is very masculine, we can talk about that more, but I feel like when you bring in that safety energy, that that control, that discipline, that yang energy, then you can create banks to that ocean, so it becomes a river, a flow that you can command. But you need so much safety and contained energy for that. So contained and condensed is a concept that I really like using in my work.
I'm curious, actually, for you, if you feel like you lean more naturally one way or the other in the sense of masculine versus feminine energy, for lack of a better word, because I feel in you a really beautiful balance. Like you do feel like this really creative, confident, grounded presence, and also so fluid and like flowing. Like I really, yeah, I feel this really beautiful balance, but I'm curious if there was one piece that was harder for you to work with than the other.
Definitely. Well, I feel like it has been stages, stages where the masculine has been really difficult and then the feminine. And what used to happen is that I would pendulate into extremes. There's a line in the Tao Te Ching that I feel like it's my Bible, that goes, know your masculine, stick to the feminine.
Mm.
And that's how I like to live life. I like to make the masculine principle invisible in my life. It's what holds me. It's what protects me, because masculine is a lot about protection, which is something that I think people that are scared of masculine energy forget that is a huge boundary. It's those banks to the river. But then if those banks exist, if those boundaries exist, if that protection exists, then I can just lean into my waters. And that's why you probably see more of my flowy feminine energy, because I have the pillars, I have the invisible masculine there to hold me. If we want to think about masculine as as authority is a container. Like whatever you put into that authority, it's going to do what it needs to do. So that's what I feel like that has helped me balance my energies. The masculine is a container, but the content of it is the feminine, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And I'm actually so passionate about this. And this has been so supportive for me in my life because I actually am someone who often the more masculine structured energy comes more naturally to me. And finding, reminding myself that having those riverbanks in place are the point of that is then to allow the river to flow. So
Yes.
I've really had to learn that, okay, I'm good at having the structure in place, and now I can just let myself be and go and reminding myself that that's the whole point. That's the purpose of the structure.
Yeah, you put it so beautifully. There's a lot of people, myself included, in the past, because I have like four placements. Like most of my chart is like half Pisces, half Capricorn. Like that is literally polarities, in a chart. And I feel like I used to forget, and I see it so much in business owners, especially, in women and femme business owners, that they build the structures and they build the masculine and they build the boundaries and they have all the systems and automations, but then they forget to flow. They actually forget that all of that is meant for them to lean and just like kind of like melt, if we're using a visual like analogy, just to melt into the feminine because they're already contained. And then you have the other case, right? That is like flowy and flowing and flowing and endlessly flowing. And then there's no direction. And it is beautiful. I love seeing a woman that is endlessly flowing, but so much more potential could be channeled if there's some banks to that river, because then she could, or they could, channel the flow of the river.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And this is actually something I really wanted to talk to you about because, unlike we were talking about before we started recording, you have been in this season of really embracing rest, and I'm not sure exactly how you would describe it, but you haven't been working as much right now. And I would just really love to talk about that experience for you and how you have found safety there, how you have allowed yourself to lean into that. This is something that I'm working on a lot within my own life right now, is not needing to earn rest or yeah, having it look any certain way or having some sort of formula to get there, and just allowing for the joy, allowing for the play and pleasure in whatever moment I can have it. So maybe there's no specific question in that right now, but I would just really love to hear your experience and maybe just talking about this season of life that you're in right now.
This is already such a beautiful conversation. And I love that we have the melting into the feminine analogy to, work with, because the only reason why I can take 3 months off in the summer and truly take months off where I'm just like, podcast episodes and chilling and writing is because I built the structures for it. So I did, well, there's two pieces. Let's talk about masculine again. Safety is masculine. So let's talk about the systems that I built, and then let's talk about the embodied piece of like feeling safe around safety, which I feel like is safe around rest and free time. Sorry, that I feel like is the juiciest part. So I plan my year. I do a lot of capacity planning, and like this is what I apply in my own life. This is what I teach in my mastermind expansion, is capacity planning for time and energy freedom. And I plan my year so I can be on for 4 months and then off for 3 months and then on for 4 months and so on, because those 4 months is when I fulfill my mastermind. And yeah, that part is easy, right? You can imagine how it goes. You just plan it, you do it. But then when it comes to actually having the free time, it took me a couple of years to feel very safe around time freedom, because I hear a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I would love to have more free time. And those are the same people, in me included in the past, that, they just fill up the calendar, or they just like happen to get busy, or they're about to, take free time and they optimize the rest, right? Like I used to do that all the time. Oh my God, I have 1 week, free in the beach. I have no work. And then I take like 10, self-help books to the beach, and I'm just like actually working and listening to podcasts and Human and Lab and like all this stuff. So the reason why we don't feel safety around this time freedom is because it doesn't come that easy for our nervous system to just relax. Because the moment that we pause and the moment that we slow down, the system can catch up with so much muck from the past. We are so used to pulling energy from the future and from the past that as soon as we call our energy back through being in the present moment, the body doesn't feel safe. And this is something that didn't come so easy when my somatic therapist, a year and a half ago, she told me like, you're fine. You just don't feel very safe around, being present. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, wow, okay, she's right. Like anytime that I have a, moment for myself, I just grab a book, or I have to be with a podcast in my ears, or I have to. So I understood this, and I started unpacking the stories that I had around time freedom. And for anyone tuning in, this is a really important exercise that is like, if you are a person that has been craving more free time but just can't seem to have it, the question is, do you actually feel safe around free time? And listening to the story that pops up is very important, because for me, the story that popped up was a little bit like, success equals working hard, not working equals falling behind. Falling behind equals unsafety. For other people, it can be, and I feel like this was for me too, not working or resting, my personality is built on overachieving. My parents only rewarded me as like, oh, you're such a good boy, oh, you're such a good girl. For other people, it might be, whenever I rest, my feelings catch up. I can't sit still and I need to numb myself out from from the present moment, which is very valid. Life can get super overwhelming and so on. The exercise is more like listening to what's the story that pops up when you ask yourself, am I actually feeling safe around time freedom? And that's the first step, unpacking that story and understanding why not. Because most of the cases, it would be a no, I think, for 99% of humans that have not done a lot of like somatic work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can probably I can't even think of someone in my day-to-day life who would feel safe and comfortable resting and putting down the work in all forms. Like, because I'm the same. If I'm not, this is something I practice so much. And one way I incorporate this into my day-to-day life is just having more silence and
Mm.
stillness and not reaching for the podcast, the self-help book, another course, like really just allowing for that spaciousness. It's That's something I've incorporated in the last few months, and it's been very challenging and deeply healing and so important for me.
Yeah.
And it's so challenging. But something that came up while you were talking is how you plan out your year in advance. And for me, maybe this is partially an intuition question. Like, how do you get that vision of what you want your year to look like? And what if you change your mind?
Yeah, well, my year is very simple, and I've learned to not overpack the year. Anything that I want to do is the cherry on top. But my year is literally launching expansion twice a year and launching creative living twice a year. You know,
I
and
love
I've
that.
built a business model where I am a rinse and repeater. I'm also a generator, which I feel like this is very much our strategy.
Hmm.
Rinse and repeat, mastery. So I feel like I could do that for the rest of my life and be happy. And any other offers, like for example, I just finished a cohort with one of my best friends, Isabel Taylor. We did a state to create. That was a beautiful somatic thing, but it was like on top, and I could do it because I had the capacity. So that's how I leave space. It's like I know I'm going to hit, my revenue goals if I only do expansion in creative living, and anything that I do on top is going to be nice. But to do that and to have those financial milestones, I had to focus all my energy in it, because if I launch a million things, my energy and my revenue would be so scattered that I would have to be focusing on other things all the time. So again, like sustain and release, I feel like I just have two big, release launches a year, and the rest of the year I'm just building the wait list for expansion, which is a way to say building the energy for expansion. And becoming the invitation, which is something that I feel like that is embodiment. I don't know if that's like stealing projector energy, as a generator, but I feel like becoming the invitation for the rest of the year and then going into inviting people twice a year has been my favorite business model. And it wasn't the case when I launched my business. I was doing every design service under the sun. I built out a team of 4 people in under a year. I hit six figures in under a year, but at what cost? I was working so much and trying out all the hats and just like feeling like, yeah, I just wanted to dedicate my energy into doing one thing. And it feels so good to commit to something. Like it just feels like I have this like tantric relationship with expansion.
I love that so much. And it speaks to how important our creative works are in the world, like how we really do birth them into the world.
Oh yeah.
And how important simplicity is. And it's another thing along with control and fearing change and not finding safety and rest is that is ingrained in us from society is that simplicity is not okay. Like we need to always be
Mhm.
doing the most complex, like adding more things, just like piling it all on. And I really have been feeling like simplicity is the most spiritual practice we could ever commit to. because
That
it's
is so beautiful.
so challenging. And yeah, so
That is spirituality, right? Stripping everything back to the core and like seeing what beats when the only thing that you can do is what you're passionate about. That's tantra, honestly. Like really stripping all of the noise down and just seeing if the heart still beats when you remove all of the decorations. And I feel like that's how I like to do business.
mm.
Very, very stripped back, very just the soul, very, very like the core of who I am.
Yeah, and that's so felt in your work. Like you can really feel how all that you offer to the world is a part of your spiritual practice.
Hmm.
And I would love to hear more about your personal spiritual path or practice and what has helped you get to this point of being so connected to that part of yourself.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I love these questions. Where to start? I mean, I could start from the beginning. I could start from the very beginning that, when I was younger, I was very punk. I was like very, very punk, super like I had my whole room with like Nirvana posters. My favorite band was Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was just like very, very punk rock and very anti-system and very like proud to be an atheist, very
Mm.
proud to like I believe in no gods and always, yeah, always talking about that very publicly. And then, I started partying and I feel like, yeah, I was so disconnected from creation itself that the only source of life that I had was destruction. Chaos, which I also think is very spiritual, really possessed me. And the only thing that I could do was party, destroy myself, do drugs, like meet the wrong people. And I was like that until I moved to France. Like I grew up in Venezuela 18 years, the last years in Venezuela was a lot like that. 2 years in France was 100% that. And then I moved into New York in Brooklyn and I found techno and it was, 1000% like that. So I didn't believe in any gods until I had a really bad bike accident one day, like I was driving my bike in Brooklyn and a garbage truck, the analogy makes a garbage truck. Like talk about rock bottom. A garbage truck T-boned me, or I T-boned it, I guess. Like I was riding next to it and it made a turn and I, got completely smashed by a garbage truck and it broke my clavicle, which is my heart center, right? My anahata chakra. And I couldn't party. I couldn't do drugs. I couldn't do any of the things that sparked me joy.
Mhm.
So I was just left, doing a lot of rehabilitation. I also was a huge gym rat and I had a boyfriend at the time, Zach, God bless him. He gave me this yoga book that he found in his studio. He was a drummer and there was like a leftover yoga book. And he's like, hey, since you can't work out, here you go. And I started reading it, and it was like something from another world connected with me. And I started practicing yoga and very quickly learned all of the asanas, very quickly got so pulled into yoga. So I guess yoga and Vedanta and Hinduism was my door to spirituality. And I started researching a lot about the chakra, and then I started researching about the Anahata chakra. And I realized all the things that, I was very far away from in my life had all to do with the heart center, right? Giving and receiving, connection to the divine, connection to God, the opening, the feminine, like all these things. I was super distant. And I started being open to miracles point blank. Like I just remember that. And since then, that was yoga. And then I was in New York and then I moved to Berlin and I was practicing a lot of yoga, a lot of techno yoga for sure. Like my churches were, Jiva Mukti yoga and the Berghain, but I was still like super spiritual and just in pursuit of yoga. But still, I must say, it wasn't spirituality. It was more like the physical, optical, spirituality. I was very connected to it, but I still didn't talk about God. And it wasn't until I moved to Brazil that I spent a long time in the jungle and I started doing, a lot of plant medicines and I started meditating a lot and I discovered plant medicine in general. Like I feel like plants really got me into the God pipeline, very quickly.
Mhm.
And then I started doing rituals, a lot of rituals, and I felt the connection with God. And since then, I could talk forever, but it's been a journey of finding God through different mediums. And the biggest one for me lately has been my creativity, because I really feel like it's a co-creation with God. I really don't feel like it's me that I'm putting all the effort. Is I need to be a vessel for the divine to come to me, for me to be creative. And that's the biggest motivation for spirituality, because I know that it's a giving and receiving system. And the more I give, the more I receive. And it all has to do with the heart again. It's like my rose and my thorn in this life.
Mm. Oh, wow, that's so, so beautiful. And I feel some of my experience reflected in that. Especially recently, I've been so connected to the fact that my spirituality, my rituals are here to allow me to use our language that we've been using, this open container for creativity to flow through me. And that does feel like my intuition, that does feel like my connection to God and source, and really structuring my life in order to have access to that as deeply as I can. This has been a very present conversation in my life because I think there are a lot of people who don't understand that way of structuring your life. If there's someone who, has a different way of orienting themselves to the world, and I tell someone that I'm not free, some of that, like to hang out or something, some of that is because like I need the space to just be by myself and to really honor the rituals that I've crafted for myself. There can be pressure from the outside world to infiltrate that.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so, what are some of the rituals that you have devoted yourself to on a more regular basis, and how do you kind of tune out the noise of the external world that might try to push its way into that?
I am going to ask you the same question when you come into my podcast, because I'm so. Can I ask you a question before we go into this one? Because I'm
Of
just so
course.
curious. Like, I'm such a generator when I go to other people's podcasts. I want to know how your connection with God deepened with your plant medicine journey, because I know that you're such a witch and such a, yeah, I want to, I'm very curious. I want to know.
Yeah, that's for me. I think of it more as my connection to nature, and I I think everything really changed when I did my herbal apprenticeship in England, and I was living in the Cotswolds, so like 3 hours outside of London, and I was able to explore the farmland and like go sourcing with with my mentor and like really be with the plants. And my first assignment when I landed with my teacher was to find this specific herb, eyebright, and to just sit with it and
Wow.
to listen to what it had to say. And that was really the first time I had done a practice like that.
Yeah.
And she was like, just sit for as long as it takes until it talks to you. And I was like, okay. And I did. And I just sat with the plant and I paid attention to what it had to say. And I felt something come alive. Like I felt this relationship with nature switch on. And it was like something in my ear like changed, like I started to hear things differently. I started to see the world differently. And now maintaining and deepening that relationship with nature is one of the main priorities in my life, one of the most significant relationships in my life. And it really is about, I mean, this is another reason why silence is so important to me because it really is about listening. And I was just writing about this recently, how I feel like nature needs all the five love languages. Like she needs us to listen to her, she needs us to talk to her, she needs us to like touch her.
Touch her.
Yeah, and to like give her
Give her
gifts.
gifts.
Yeah, like have an altar to nature, like and really deepening my that relationship in that way. And it's really impacted my relationship with myself because another thing I always say is the deeper our relationship with nature, the deeper our relationship with ourselves. And I've really felt that in my own life.
So beautiful. I definitely want to hear more of that story. I can't even say that I finished it because it's just so precious. I am almost done with a 7 month Blue Lotus apprenticeship. Like
Wow.
it's so sacred. Like I can't even talk about it. it just has been so beautiful to sit with one plant for so long. It started in Sri Lanka that, there was a lot of blue lotuses in there. And then I found an herbal mentor, Adrienne, and I've been doing, her course that is like, it's not even a course, it's just like this beautiful journey, sitting with the lotus, taking the lotus in different forms, doing my tinctures with lotus. And yeah, I mean, I'm still integrating a lot of that experience. I wish I could talk about it as you can talk about it, but I think sitting with one plant is one of the most beautiful things in life. But going back to your question, I was like, what are the rituals that how I cultivate spirituality? It's very fluid these days. Like I've definitely had more, like pulling a deck and going into my altar and praying and doing this and that. And now I feel like my non-negotiable, which is also like what we do in expansion, is just having a morning practice that is fluid and is waking up and asking, what is the spirit craving right now? Like, how does it want to manifest through me? So instead of having this, like, I'm going to drink cacao and this and that, which is a little bit of optimizing spirituality, to be honest, like how I used to do it before, check, okay, connected with God, check my prayers and affirmations. And now what I do every day, it's my expansion visualization practice. So I have a future self manifesto, and this is like a, requirement in expansion that they do it every morning. I say out loud my future self manifesto. I write my auto suggestions that are like kind of like affirmations, but more specific. I do it all in this. I have it here in this purple journal, and then I sit and meditate, and I just don't expect anything, I meditate. I sit and meditate. That is my spiritual practice nowadays. I am doing a mix of like meditation slash kriyas from Kundalini yoga slash sometimes I even like start EFTing in the middle of my meditation. Like it's really like whatever wants to come through. And I feel like that's exactly what we started talking in the conversation. It's like, whereas before it was all pillars and all structure and there was not really a place for the feminine to flow. Now it's just like, I know that the container is there. So I just have to sit. I just have to show up, I just have to like sit and be like, all right, I've arrived. What's the message?
Mhm. Yes, yes, yes. I've again had such a similar experience in the sense that, again, like I was saying, sometimes the structure and masculine energy can come more easily to me, or I lean more into that. And so I've really been like a strict, devoted disciple of spirituality and had my rituals and did all the things in like a very specific way. And now my main practice, and again it's one of the most spiritual practices that I do, is letting go of that. And something that I have found as a theme in my life is knowing the rules so I can break the rules. Like I love being a student, I love learning, I love soaking it in when I'm really interested and passionate about something. And so then I have that structure, I build that foundation for myself, and then I let it all go and just let myself trust my intuition to lead me where I need to go. And that's why one of my more recent practices that has come into my life that's also completely changed my life is tea ceremony. And so I sit with my tea every day, and that's also really helped me embrace that feminine flow energy more. And like you said, no expectations. Like I meditate with my tea, I journal, I talk to nature, and I let go of the expectations or the need for it to look any certain way.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's back to what you said, that simplification is spirituality at the end. Like if you think about life, if you think about life actually, like it is all like a test or a preparation to really strip layer by layer everything. And the last layer being, your own body.
Mhm.
And I feel like the sooner we get into that train of like simplifying and letting go, like the easier it will be to let go of, the body and then just ascend into whatever is there to ascend into or descend or who knows. But I feel like, yeah, simplification has been one of the biggest spiritual practices of my life. Very sacred, definitely very sacred.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, our fear of, if we're framing it in this way, our fear of simplicity is also kind of our fear of death. And we're like piling on all this armor to protect us from that uncertainty and trying to like, you know, hoard all these things to have the control and build in all the distractions and all the noise. And when we strip it all back and are left with just the essence of life, the essence of who we are, there's so much freedom in that. And I think we're actually, a lot of us are afraid of freedom.
Yes. Wow. Yes. I mean, this is the meat of the conversation because at the end, what we're saying is like, if we're even bringing it back to safety and what we're saying in the beginning is like the body is so afraid to change is because like when you do the math, the body is just really afraid of dying. And all these things, uncertainty, equals dying unless you have trained your body to jump and jump and jump into the unknown and say, hey, see, we did it. We didn't die. We jumped and we can jump higher next time. And actually, that is what shapeshifting is about. It's losing the fear around freedom, because as long as you don't do that, freedom equals death. And this sounds insane if you listen to it and you don't, know the context. But from all the conversations that we've been having today, that is actually the core of liberation, right? Saying, the moment is so precious that if I die right now, I know that I lived a free life. And I know it myself, that if I die tomorrow, if I die in the second, I know that I was so true to the core of who I am that I will be liberated.
Yeah, and that's why I think one reason why I'm so passionate about people connecting to their intuition and letting that lead their life is because then you can live with this foundation of trust and confidence in your life. Like you don't have to, that subconscious fear isn't always bubbling to the surface because we know we're living our life to the fullest. Like we're sucking all the joy and juice out of life, and we just you can feel that in your bones, even if like consciously you're not thinking that. Like you can feel that that's happening, and so your body just like trusts life more naturally.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is intuition, self-trust on crack.
What has your process with intuition, self-trust been like? Like, did you always have this level of connection to your intuition and to trust within yourself?
Yes, I feel like before, even like when the era that I was describing, my, Chili Peppers, Kurt Cobain, techno era, it was more like impulse. Like I thought it was impulse, and it was like a bad intuition that is like, oh yeah, let's just stay 4 days, in this after party and go home with like that's the impulse, that I didn't know that it was intuition, but it led me to places that I really needed to be, led me to connecting with people that I really needed to connect, but I never frame it as intuition. Like as I said, I really wasn't spiritual at all, so I wasn't aware that intuition was even a thing. And nowadays, like babes, I cannot tell you, and especially with Tom, my partner, like he's a very, very Cancer man, very fluid, very, very, he's my teacher of the feminine. Actually, I feel like he's taught me more about my own feminine than anyone else. And sometimes we're in a country and we're about to, because we travel a lot. For those who don't know me, I am super nomadic, but as in like one day I'm living in Egypt and the next day I'm living in like hot in the Philippines. And some days with Tom and I, like we've been, I don't know, we're gonna jump on a train, like this happened in Egypt, and we're gonna jump on a train, and we're like, absolutely not. We don't have to be there. We do not need to be there. And the more it's like a radio, that the more in the beginning, if you haven't used your intuition there, it's gonna sound a little bit like shh, and the more you tune into it, the clearer it is. And now I just can't ignore it. And now it's like I sound crazy sometimes, and I'm like, I'm not going there, absolutely not. Or like I need to go for a walk and go to a coffee shop, and then there I just meet someone, or someone gives me a book, or like today, this morning, I really needed to go for a walk, and I ended up going into this store, bought the most incredible linen shawl. Like, oh my God, it's just so magical. And I talked for an hour to the lady that was there. She was a Polish lady, was living here in Costa Brava. And, the mission that we're doing now, she just gave me so many clues, so many little clues, and I was there just like writing on my notes, and it was so incredible. And now I have the shawl, and I think that this show is also going to bring me into another mission. It just works like this. I think when you give symbolism to a lot of things in your life, then you can play intuition like a game. But when nothing really has meaning and you have an agenda for everything, it's very difficult to listen to your intuition because you need to do this and you need to be there. Oh, what's the point of this? And it's like, what's the point of anything, you know?
It's so hard to describe to people who don't have that sense of trust, but really once you just let yourself give into it and let yourself practice it, the voice does get louder and louder and louder, and it gets so hard to ignore. And
Yeah.
everyone has it. Everyone has that ability. I think we do ourselves such a disservice when we continuously, purposely, even if it's unconscious, disconnect from that. It's honestly such a gift that you and Tom play off of each other in that way, because I think it is really rare to find a partner who is as committed to that same path as you are, especially a male partner. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I love to hear he it sounds like he always had this gift within himself as well.
Mhm.
But how do you guys support each other through this or navigate this in your relationship together?
I wish I had words for it. It just feels very tantric. It just feels very fluid. It just feels like I look at him and we know, and he looks at me and I know. And if I can describe it with the metaphors we've been using, because I love metaphors for this, he is the container and I flow in it. And it really feels like he makes a lot of the decisions and I trust him completely because I'm just contained in any decision that he makes. And I think when I stopped trying to take all the decisions and, lead in my relationship, I found so much peace because I lead in so many other parts of my life, right? In my business, in my mastermind, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the moment that I let myself be led, everything changed. Everything changed. And I think that is my way that I should be in a partnership. Like with the rest of the world, I'm very Capricornian. With Tom, I am like the most Pisces baby. He has his moon on Pisces, his sun on Cancer. Like it's just like water. I have my Pisces rising. Like it's just the most watery, feeling. So it's hard to describe, but I think we have built a system where it's very felt what we need to do. And like we're here in Girona. For how long we have no idea. We went to Australia like this. Oh, let's go to Australia. Let's go to Australia. Let's go to Japan. Let's go to Japan. Like there was no plans of going to Japan. There was no plans of going to Nepal, but it's like something that just flows. So I don't know whose ideas is first. Sometimes we look at each other and it's like, what are we doing in Korea again? But I really feel like it's just like this dynamic that we have together. It feels in a non-creepy way or in a non-codependent way. Sometimes it does feel like our life's purpose are so intertwined that sometimes it's like one soul making the decisions, or one God's plan, we're both in God's palm. So we don't need to be taking decisions because we're being taken by the same train, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's so powerful to hear you talk about it. It's very inspiring for me. Um, yeah, it's beautiful. And that it makes me, you're talking about, soul purpose, and I'm curious if you feel like you can put into words, and maybe you can't because this is a big question, but like what do you feel like your soul's purpose in this lifetime or even this season of your life is?
Yeah, I think, and this is gonna sound very like I'm intimidated to say this, but I think I help people. Ooh, I'm gonna say it. It just sounds a
Say
little bit like, I just hope it doesn't sound like too grandiose, but I think I really help people like get comfortable with the fact that, they're walking towards their own liberation,
it.
like break their own ceiling, in an easier way. But I think expansion, my mastermind, is a little bit of a Trojan horse for liberation because that's what is celebrated the most in the mastermind. Like, yeah, the people that come to the mastermind, they're all witches. They're all high achievers. Every single goal they have, they will, like, with the level of accountability, like, they will get to it. But the thing that is the most celebrated is actually when they have a very intuitive moment and when they have a pivot or when they're like resting for a long time. So I feel like liberating people is something that I'm very passionate about. And if I could do something for the rest of my life, would be that, helping people liberate themselves from their own self-concept.
Wow. And that's not too grandiose, and you are doing that. So you should say it with full confidence, 100%.
I'm still liberating myself, by the way. Like
Oh,
I'm leading with
absolutely.
you.
Yeah. I mean, I think not always that, there's that saying we offer to the world like what we need. And I do think that's true to a degree, but I think it's like we just offer to the world what, for some reason or another, what we are so deeply entwined with.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense that this is such a theme in your life in so many different ways.
Definitely. And liberation, it really used to be more in a very rebellious fuck the system way. And now like liberation is such a beautiful pursuit because it's not even freedom, it's like liberation. Yeah, it's very special.
And what if you had to, 'cause so many people I'm talking to, and you can tell me if this is your experience, I feel like they're in a very distinct period of life where we're like leaving one chapter behind and entering a new chapter.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if that's your experience, and if so, if you have words for what you feel like is what you're leaving behind and what you feel like is the chapter that you're entering.
That's exactly where I'm at right now. And it has been the, like, I call this the space between. And, I wrote an essay about it. I talk about it all the time because I think it's the most fertile soil. It is the most fertile soil for the next chapter. And I think I've been in the longest periods of space betweening in my life. Because in May, okay, this was like 2 months ago already. I had the one of the biggest manifestations of my life came true. I haven't even been able to talk about it because I'm still integrating it. A very, very big goal of mine came true to the T in the most beautiful way. Amazing quantum leap, like really. Tom also launched his book, Expansion sold out like crazy. And I feel like from that moment on, I was asked to sit for a second, and I paused my podcast. I paused a lot of like content creation. I paused a lot of like writing. And it has been really incredible for me to pause. So for anyone that is going through that space betweening, my recommendation would be to do less and pause and sit in silence to really see who wants to emerge, because that is the most fertile ground in the world. And if we want to talk about it somatically, because what happened to me is that I was like on the edge of freeze response, right? Because I was like so like the next chapter, felt so kind of like the next chapter felt like a costume, but the current one felt like it was trapping me. And it was so interesting to see how I was so close to going into freeze response, because it's like, am I just chilling? Am I doing nothing, or am I going into freeze response? And like the only way to fight freeze response is by doing less, is by removing, layers and removing things and allowing yourself to sit through it. So I feel like the space between, if it was something somatically, would be freeze. And I must say, because freeze is very demonized, but our bodies need to go through freeze response sometimes. Like it is just, you can't just be regulated all the time. You cannot. And it's so important to allow yourself to freeze for a second, allow yourself to go into this, nervous system response where your body just needs to integrate. So for me, integration is all about saying, allowing your body to be calm for a second and saying, okay, this just happened and this is going to happen. And I don't know how this looks like, but I need to be here still. And so all of May was that for me. A little bit April, May, yeah, June, a little bit of June was like that. And then I went to Japan. I went to this onsen where I didn't work for 2 weeks, slammed my laptop shut. That's when my, 3 month sabbatical started. Boom. And I feel like I let myself melt so deeply in the onsen. Onsen, for those who don't know, is a Japanese bathhouse. I was there with 16 women. That was like cleanse completed. I know what we're about. Has been a month and a half since then, and I'm still like, appreciating the space between. Like I feel like I'm just exiting anything, but it has been miraculous to allow myself to take 2 months off creating because I just needed to process, you know?
Yeah, I thank you so much for sharing that experience because I think that this is something I have reflected on a lot and written about a lot is this in between space because I've been in an in between of my own. You know, I feel like I'm really finally maybe exiting it. Um, and we are constantly so afraid of that in between. We're constantly so afraid of that transition. And I really think it comes back to our fear of death and
Yeah.
simplicity and shedding because we want to always be going from, okay, chapter ended, we immediately start the next. Like we never have that like full shedding and release and emptiness process that comes with the in between and with the transition. And this is why I think it's so important to ritualize transitions in our life, like ritualize morning from night, really allowing these in between spaces in our day to day in small ways so that when they come in bigger forms in our life, we're not afraid of them and we're not running from them. And we need to allow ourselves to go through that in between, to have that pause moment, to rest in that, to bring it all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, to allow for the rest and to find safety in that.
I think what you said is, yeah, the most beautiful is to ritualize transition and not demonize it. I feel like when you start, getting really comfortable in the space between, that's when you can become like the real shapeshifter, right? That you are shedding skins at such a velocity and in such an intensity that the only thing that's left is the core. So I do know that every time that I'm in the space between, I'm stripping back more and more. So I welcome it more, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And that is, I feel like full liberation when you're not afraid of just shedding and shedding and shedding. And when you just let your core essence kind of lead you through life and not being afraid of where that's going to take you, like that is full freedom.
When you have nothing to lose, and in the best way, not in a fuck it, rebellious way, but in a I have nothing left to shed.
I could talk to you forever.
Yeah, no, no, no. Part two is coming on my podcast, everyone. Just come to the after party is gonna be on my podcast. So no worries at all.
Living intuitively wild means connecting to your true self and living dedicated to who you are at your core, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
Devotion is a word that came to me, devotion into the mystery, devotion into wildness itself, devotion to the wild women archetype, devotion to women, devotion to womanhood, devotion to the spirits and whatever awaits on the other side. And such an immense, wild, devotion to curiosity itself. I feel like for me, that's what has maintained me being intuitively wild for all my life.
Oh, such a beautiful answer. And I want to give everyone a book recommendation if you haven't read it yet, because this is one of my favorite books of all time. And I read it a long time ago, and you actually inspired me to pick it up again and to just like really have it on hand all the time, which is Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh yeah, Bible.
Absolutely, like truly, truly, if I could only take one book with me for the rest of my life, it would be this book.
I actually have a book club, and we just read Women Who Run with the Wolf. So I'll send you the link for anyone that wants to watch the replay of that meeting, which was epic. I always lead people to expansion because it's the best. And I'm not going to say anything else. If you feel pulled, this is how I keep, the invitation open to expansion. If you feel the pull to expansion and you have heard like little breadcrumbs of expansion here and there, that means, follow the breadcrumbs. So I will leave you expansion somewhere. And my pod, definitely, like we're gonna have you in the pod so people can jump into the part two.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to say that working with Maya is just such a gift in any way that you can. So highly
Oh
recommend.
yeah, also like of course, creative living is amazing. Like if you are feeling the pull towards creative liberation, like that's what it is, abolishing self-censorship, creative liberation through the expression of creativity, which is my friend Lois's job in creative living, and the energetics of creativity, that's kind of my role, then definitely come to creative living because we're gonna have round three in the fall.
Thank you so much again. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.